Welcome to Vishvavahini TV. After having spoken to Janaka about his concert in Queensland, 3 of them that is, I have the pleasure of speaking to Mary. Mary is simply Mary. But you know, simply Mary actually means a heck of a lot more. I say simply Mary because there are many Mary Murphys if you look up or try to Google her name. But this Mary has been in show business since she was actually knee-high to a grasshopper. She started at the ripe old age of 3. Taken to the various venues by her father, who was a critic. She had the distinct pleasure of watching and learning. Later on in life, she did actually go to a school to study music. She is currently working. She's also one of our great coffee mates, and we look forward to seeing her each Friday. And so, without further ado, give me the pleasure of meeting Mary Murphy. Thank you, Mary.
How do you do,
Mary, tell me about a 3-year-old little girl being escorted to the various programs by your dad.
I must have been a dreadful child because he took me to all kinds of plays, musicals. I loved the ballet from the age of 3. That's what I was going to be, a ballet dancer. And then my father said to me, "No way, you haven't got enough discipline." So I didn't become a ballet dancer. I became a singer, which was mainly, Ryle, I don't think I planned anything in my life. Because nothing would have come of it. If I planned things, something would have come up to stop them. So I just let go, free.
Were you MAME?
I was in MAME, one of the singers in MAME,
Okay.
yes.
And then were you the Shirley Temple of that era?
No, my parents wouldn't let me go and perform. I did it all at home.
Okay.
But when I was in my teens, I suffered from asthma.
Okay.
And so I was sent to singing lessons to learn the breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And they found this voice in there somewhere. And so the next thing, I was a professional singer. I didn't plan it. And one night I was singing on television in Melbourne, and the choreographer of the musicals for J.C. Williamson Theatres, she happened to see me, and I think I was the right height, or something about me was right, and she called me in for an audition for the musical Hello Dolly. And I got into Hello Dolly. And for some reason, she never auditioned me again. I just went from one show to the next, and I think it was my height.
Do you think it's a little shortness? Or?
When I was 3, I was too short, but when I grew, I
Okay.
did grow a little bit,
Yeah.
not mentally so much.
But Mary, who wants a mentality where, I would rather your mentality where you come and enjoy a cup of coffee on a Friday, sometimes you bring little memorabilia, you have so much of the history of what happened on television. You got great mates like Mike Walsh, Philip Brady, Mike McCall-Jones.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a life that anybody would love to live.
Oh, exactly. I have no regrets about anything. Just have loved everything in my life because I've accepted the bad with the good.
Yeah.
And I just think that's all you can do, because nothing is more important than this day. And if you go into life with that feeling, you have a good time.
In the 70s, you were on board
Yes, I did some cruises, and I have a friend actually who's cruising at the moment. She and her husband go off about, every year they go on a cruise. She's sent me letters from every port she's written, and she was telling me how the people hear all this gossip, and it goes all over the ship, you know, "Oh, did you know someone must have died last night?" Because, yes, definitely, and they've got all these rumours about things happening on the ship which probably didn't happen. But this ship they're on is a Russian one, I think, And all I can say to her is she should have worked with the Italians, because the Italians were hysterical. I just loved them. And they were real work dodgers. They could find a reason not to do things.
Yeah.
And one of the things that kept coming to me, which I wasn't experienced about, was that, oh, 2 people died last night. We saw them throw them over the edge into the sea. And eventually I asked one of the Italians, I said, what is this rumour? And he said, well, it's actually not bodies. What we do is we throw the mail over the side at night. Because why do people want to be getting letters from home when they're having such a good time? They don't want to be hearing any of the bad news from home. And so that was their way. I mean, they wanted everyone to be happy. So
they threw
over the
mail.
side with their letters.
I hope it was the MAIL and not the MALA. Because the Italians are romantics.
Oh, they're wonderful. Love them.
So you started, you did the Mikado.
Yes, I did. When I first started singing, I just loved the Gilbert and Sullivan operas, because that was my dad's, absolutely loved them.
Okay.
And so we had no choice, we had to love them too. And he actually wrote a book on Gilbert and Sullivan, which I came across recently as I'm packing up all kinds of things. And I found this book that he'd written. It had a notice from a publisher in London saying what a great book it was, but there were too many on the market at the moment, and this was back in 1940-something. So I'm thinking I'm going to take it to a publisher now.
Yes.
And see if I can get it published.
Yes, what a good idea.
Yes, so, you know, my brothers and I grew up loving theatre. My brother Jim went into journalism, and he also worked for publicist for a couple of television stations.
Jim is a larger than
Jim's
life mate.
Yes, he's Philip's mate. He was at school with Philip Brady, yes. And my other brother Peter, who sadly has passed on, he and I were very close. And Peter was a publicist as well. And he worked for a couple of the film companies, the American film companies. And he entertained people like John Travolta and all these wonderful people who came to Australia. Peter promoted their films and took them all over Australia to be interviewed. See, if he was still here, he could brought someone into you.
I'm sure. Philip's like that. He said, look, if you need a phone number, let me know, and I can get them for you. Yeah. But I feel it a bit unfair to use Philip to get people, if you know what I mean.
Yes, he dogs people in a bit, yes.
Oh, he's a great guy. Jim, in recent times, had suffered a heart attack.
That's right, yes, he did. And he's never been as well in his whole life as he is now. So they did something right.
Yeah, they did something.
And he's very healthy and well.
Yeah. I'm the same. In 2012, I had open heart surgery. I was riding a motorbike then.
Look at you.
Yeah, I'm cool. I'm fine. I still ride my motorbike. I still ride a bicycle. Still climb trees when I find one that is short enough.
I should
and I
be
still
interviewing
have coffee
you.
on Friday. So Mary, the ballet, that you are a lover of the ballet.
Love ballet. I wish I could dance. A bit late now, but I do wish I had worked as a dancer. But I took my father's advice and knew I would need the discipline.
Father knows best.
He did.
What was Mum doing all this time?
Oh heavens, cooking probably. She didn't enjoy going out very much. She was a real homebody, and she was a wonderful woman.
Unlike you.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah,
Very
you're
interesting,
a
my mother.
social butterfly.
Yeah.
So is your mate Dorothy, right?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And Dorothy can't sit still anywhere for too long.
No, well, she's wonderful. I've known her for a long time.
Yes. Tell me about Mike Walsh. You befriended Mike for a long time, and Mike, you have been great mates.
Yes.
So much so that when he purchased Her Majesty's, I can remember the time because he spoke about it on his Mike Walsh afternoon show for some time. And I'll never forget one person, and that would be Jeannie Little.
Well, oh, darling Jeannie. She was a wonderful person.
I must say that at the beginning, I used to be embarrassed by her, darling. And I took that as a cue for me to go and have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea.
She was really outrageous.
She was.
And the poor darling, she's in a rest home, and she has dementia. Doesn't even know her family. It's very sad because Jeannie was everyone's best friend. She was,
absolutely.
and it's sad.
I remember her on one of Channel 9's Logie programs, and those huge eyelashes and those larger-than-life earrings and all
Well,
that.
she went on one day in a dress made out of green garbage bags.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, she was outrageous. Terribly funny.
Those people aren't around anymore.
No.
You don't see those
No.
those people like that on television, who a lot of them, Today's television is almost insipid.
Well, I think we've become more politically correct and trying to please everybody.
Yeah. Political correctness has stopped entertaining
It's had its
us.
day, I think. I mean, people that were in television when I did a little bit of television, they were just themselves, like your Graham Kennedy and your Mike Walsh, and that was all you needed, was them to be their personality,
Yeah.
and it entertained you.
There aren't any personalities as
No,
such.
no,
Eddie
nearly.
McGuire is there, but while he tries to be funny, I can't call him a personality.
Well, I think the sense of humour has changed. I mean, the shows that I really found were comedies, with things like the Two Ronnies and that kind of English humour, and a little bit of the American humour, but it's not around anymore.
No. If you wanted to see humour, you had to watch the British humour.
I think so, yes, I think so.
There were so many, even Steptoe and Son, all that type of stuff. They were great. Dad and Dave here.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And they weren't censored as much as now. You're too frightened of offending people.
Yeah.
And
Well, look what happened to
Mark
cartoon.
Knight. Well, see, I got a bit angry about the criticism of that, and it's mainly from people outside Australia, because I think if you live here long enough, you've had enough of that kind of humour to know that nobody means to be nasty. And as they said in the paper today, there were cartoons that he'd drawn of other sporting people, of the President of the United States, of our Prime Ministers, and they were all wonderful caricatures.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
one he did of the tennis player was absolutely brilliant. And I had seen her do that act. I mean, that absolute
we saw
spitting the
it.
dummy.
I'll put it on Facebook.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's wonderful, because how she behaved with that little girl who's winning her first American, what's it called, the championship.
tournament,
Yeah. Well, that girl has idolised Williams all her life, and then to be treated like that, and the little girl was crying and saying,
Everything has
Give
been
it to-
taken away from her
yes,
for
And
this
nobody's
big
mentioned
hulk
that.
of a woman
yeah,
who is so totally unfair, who broke the laws of tennis.
oh, and broke her racket. And I
And
think
broke-
that's unforgivable,
Yeah.
that kind of tantrum.
We said the same thing about John McEnroe when he spat
Yes,
the dummy and
that's
he
right.
did the. So what's the big deal? I'm saying that the hair and the lips are all about, it's uncalled for. If they had not worried about it, it would have been faded by
Yeah.
now. But somebody is having a couple of free beers on the fact that this is happening.
Oh no, it'll blow over, I suppose, but it's not fair. And I think it did spoil that Japanese girl's day.
Mm. Did you ever have the opportunity of meeting Sir Robert Helpman and Dame Margaret Fontaine?
I was lucky enough to meet Margot Fontaine, and she was at Her Majesty's Theatre in Melbourne, and I went with my dad to see the ballet, and was introduced to her, and I couldn't speak, of course, absolutely overwhelmed. But I've got a wonderful picture in my office at Her Majesty's Theatre, where I do the history of the theatre, And I got a wonderful ad out of one of the older programs of Margot Fontaine with a cigarette in her hand. She was recommending art cigarettes.
You can't do today. Yeah.
So that things have changed.
Is it true that there's a ghost in...
Oh.
I can't let
There's
that
a ghost. There's a ghost. I go around and speak to Probus clubs, groups of women and men,
Yes.
and Rotary clubs and that, and talk about the theatre and answer questions. And that's one of the questions that when it comes up, I usually draw a deep breath and try and change the subject, because we haven't proven that there is a ghost in Her Majesty's.
But you can't. You can never prove it.
Well, you can, because the one that's up, dare I mention the name, the one that's up at the Princess Theatre actually was a singer, an opera singer, and during a performance of Faust, the opera, he goes down a trapdoor. And as he went down that trapdoor, he had a heart attack and died. And that is the ghost. Federici is their ghost, and many people have seen this ghost. And some of the producers of the shows actually reserve a seat on opening nights in case he turns up and there's a seat for him to sit in.
So, do you feel this is fact, or are they just milking it for what it's
What
worth?
do you think? Oh, I'd milk away if I had any chance to do it at ours. But there is a story that I do believe, I mean, it's a true story, that one of the actors died in the dressing room before a performance of Yeoman of the Guard. And he didn't make it on stage, and his understudy had to change out of a yeoman's costume that he had on to be in the chorus, and he had to change and go into the costume of the jailer and run on stage and give the lady singing that stage, waiting for the jailer to come on, gave her the fright of her life because it wasn't the one she expected. And his name was Arthur Mays. And I believe that anyone sees anything, it's Arthur, because, you know, there's a superstition really that in theatre, people go back to where they were happiest in their life, and so naturally that's where they go.
Yeah.
And
What
we
better
had
place
photos
for an actor
taken.
to die than on stage?
No, well, there's all these superstitions in theatre, but we did have someone come in that was going around the world writing a book, and they were taking photographs of orbs, which are the spirits, and these particular cameras can photograph, and the orbs will come up in the picture. And they said there were more orbs in Her Majesty's Theatre in Melbourne than there are at Drury Lane in London.
I think Mike Walsh paid them some money.
No. How could you say that? No.
Sri Lankans, Asian people do believe in ghosts. Let me tell you a small story. I was quite young. There had been an election in Sri Lanka, and I lived up on the hills. So after school, I had gone to maybe cricket practice or soccer practice or something like that. It was raining, the time was about 6 o'clock. The grounds were opposite a Buddhist seminary, and from there I had to walk to go to where I was living as a young kid. And as I walked, it was well known that there were a clump of bamboo, green bamboo, and it was always stated that there was a ghost there. So when you went past that, you never looked up at the trees, right? You looked down at the road and where you're going to put your next foot, and you walked as fast as you could past this clump. But I had to have a sneak look. So I looked up and I saw this person waving at me like, come here, doing that. So suddenly, as it is now, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I ran like hell. I didn't stop till I got home.
You didn't wave back.
I didn't wave back. So I got home, and the servants wanted to know why I had run and what's wrong and all because I must have been in tears. And I told them. So the next day, my aunt, who I was living with at that time, took me to school. And on my way to school, she said, "Now I want you to look up." No. "I want you to look up." No. "I want you to look up." No. So about the fifth time I did look up, and there is this green flag, which was one of the election flags, waving away, calling me.
Well, and so what did you tell people? Did you ever tell anyone about the flag?
Oh yes.
Oh, I thought you were going to leave it as the ghost.
No, I wouldn't do that. I was too scared. I was not scared of snakes, but I was scared of ghosts.
Of ghosts.
And I must tell you, I have never seen a ghost in my life.
Well, don't go to the Princess Theatre. Come to Her Majesty's.
Whom are you going to call? Ghostbusters. Don't call Ryle. So, now after Mikado, can you remember the second show you did?
Well, I did a lot of Gilbert and Sullivan in amateur theatre when I was a teenager, and I did Mikado a couple of times, but no. Then I went into professional theatre because that choreographer had seen me on television and wanted the voice, wanted the height, and so after Oliver, I went straight into Hello Dolly, I went straight into Oliver. And that was wonderful because we had 3 casts of children, the 12 little boys, they had to have 36 little boys. And some of them I've kept in touch with ever since then. That was 1966 we did that, into 67, and toured all over Australia with it and had the best time. It was wonderful. I loved that show.
Didn't leave you much room for marriage and children and
Well,
extracurricular activities.
oh, you see, I used to fall in love with all the gay boys and wondered why I couldn't get anywhere.
Well, I haven't fallen in love with any gay boys, right?
They're so gorgeous.
But that does happen, doesn't it?
Oh, of course it does.
I think I saw this article that said all the good guys are either married or they're gay. So,
Yes, well, that's pretty right. I was always falling in love with someone, and then you'd either move on and go to another town or something. But I did really and truly find the most wonderful love of my life when I was 40.
and
Couldn't believe it. And then sadly he died. Not straight away. Not the shock of seeing me. But it was a wonderful time in my life. It was wonderful, yeah. So all this other falling in love was nothing, because suddenly I knew what it was.
I like, I think I asked Philip about why haven't you married, and he said,
I'm waiting for him.
No, he said that he had met a lot of people, and he liked a lot of people, but he had never met a keeper.
No, this is true. And when I did, I realised that I probably wouldn't have been totally happy with any of the others. You know, because this other one, this wonderful man was a journalist, and he was the funniest man I'd ever met, and so it was very loving and thoughtful.
Is that an important factor, being funny and
For me, I think I couldn't cope with anyone without a sense of humour. No.
But that seems to be a point with a lot of women, that they like somebody who has a sense of humour.
Yeah. Because you don't want to be cheering someone up all the time.
Well, you know.
I mean, he'd do crazy things. I'd come home and we had camellia trees in the garden. And when the camellias were all out in blossom, I came home this day and there were camellia petals all the way from the front gate right down the drive.
Come and clean this up.
I wish I'd thought of that. I wish I had. But he'd always surprising me with little notes and presents. And
Yeah. I've gone through that period where I'd be biting into a sandwich at work and, what's that in the paper? Love you. Put it in the bin. But later on you think of it, and it becomes so important those little things. I have had my wife do it to me, where she didn't put roses, but she put a couple of petals in a sandwich I was going to eat.
Oh, that could be very healthy.
It could have been. I don't even remember whether there were any worms in it. But I bit into it and then, what the hell has she done now? Okay, a rose petal. But yeah, I'm recalling them now. And those little things do mean a lot, don't they?
Well, it was unpredictable. You know, just funny, crazy things to make me laugh. And I mean, one day we're walking through the city and we had a car that the driver's door didn't lock. And so we didn't bother about that, it never worried us. And this day we're walking through Collins Street and he'd got to the car and then in the loudest voice he said, "Oh, I'm sick of this. Come on, these are easy to break into," he said in this great loud voice. "Come on, quick." And pulled the door open and shoved me in and so embarrassed. Just a spur of the moment.
That's good. I like that one. So, tell me about what a historian does, and I might say an honorary historian does,
Right.
collecting all the stuff. You must have loads of it by now.
Yes, and a lot of people don't understand and they keep coming past my office and saying, "Oh, look, we've got a skip outside, would you like to put all this stuff here?" And so I have a saying that you will not mention that 4-letter word stuff in my presence because it's 5 letters. No, it's just that if you're interested in history, and I've got a passion about that particular theatre, because that's where I did most of my work, and I think that to me it's just an icon. It's a part of Melbourne's history. It's got all Joan Sutherland, Nellie Melba, all these people. You can stand on the stage and you sort of think they stood here, and it's the most wonderful, wonderful history. And when Mike Walsh bought the theatre, it had been rumoured it was going to be a car park. The people who had it were business people and had been given a huge offer for it. So Mike just went in and bought it and then said, "What have I done?" And then proceeded to spend millions and millions of dollars, you know. And he's brought it right back to the way it was in 1934, which was the Art Deco period, and it had been in a disastrous fire in 1929 and was almost destroyed. So they brought it back then up over 4 years to this beautiful theatre that it is. And so over the years it got a bit dilapidated and a bit run down. So he went back to that 1934 model and has made it just, it's wonderful, wonderful theatre.
Majesty's Theatre has always been in people's conversation, right?
I think that, well, over the years some of the best shows have been there. The others will dispute that, but I think I've spent more time before I worked there going to shows at Her Majesty's than other places.
Yeah, look, I came to Australia in '69, and I should know less about the Majesty's Theatre than most, but I have heard about the Majesty's Theatre before Mike Walsh, during Mike Walsh, after Mike Walsh, and I'm still hearing about it. So there must be a significant amount of memories that are attached to even Graham Kennedy. I remember Graham Kennedy mentioning it.
He loved theatre. Yeah.
What is the state of the theatre at the moment? You use it, of course.
Yeah, it's perfect because Mike has just been in Australia. He lives in London, comes back 3 or 4 times a year, and wanders around and will notice the tiniest thing that was out of place, a picture that was crooked or something, and he'll immediately, so people get very nervous when he's coming back thinking, did I do all the things I was asked to do? And it's in beautiful condition. You haven't come in, would you come in one day and have a look?
I'd love to.
Yes, do that. Come in, I'll show you around.
I'd love to.
Yes, because I do tours with
the ghost is not there when I do it.
I can't guarantee that.
Yeah, you can keep the ghost away. I mean,
Oh.
at least keep the spirits away. Mary, There's a lot more to Mary than I've been able to cover.
Oh, well, it's because I've never planned anything. I've fallen... See, I left the theatre performing when my mother took seriously ill. I was in Perth and I couldn't get out of the show, so I had to stay there and come back, and by that time she was really starting to depend on other people. And so I stayed home. And I cared, you know, which was, I'd do it again. But people said to me, oh, but you missed all those years of, you know, things you could have been doing. But no, I chose to do it, and I think that's just the way life goes. Because if you start arguing with God and saying, I don't want this, it's not going to do any good.
After all is said and done with, you look after the archives, you have a home, you're obviously at least my age. How do you manipulate your time now?
Well, I do 2 or 3 days in at the theatre, and I spend time going to the theatre. There's a couple of shows on at the moment in this Fringe Festival that I'd like to see. But I've also had a health problem with my back, and sometimes I'm not able to get around as much as I wanted to. Fortunately, I can't do much housework. That's good.
So you get somebody to come and do it for you, right?
No, I just neglect it, sweep it under the...
Sweep it under the carpet.
It's...
Yeah. I do a lot of that myself. Where is Mary at the moment, and where are you going?
Today, this very day?
No.
Well, I don't know, you see. Tomorrow's another
next
day.
10 years, next 20 years.
Oh, look, I'd like to live that long. I'd like, I don't know, I'll hang in there until they get that skill.
Oh, yeah. And make sure that they don't throw you in.
But I would love to travel more than I have. And of course you don't travel when
Another
you're working.
cruise?
No, I don't think I could con my way onto another cruise, because you see I was singing then, and it was easier.
What's wrong with your voice now?
Well, listen to it. No, you don't. You've got to care for your voice. Look, I've got friends that were in theatre with me, and they're still going around entertaining at nursing homes, and you know, but mind you, that people haven't got any chance to complain if they don't like them. I wouldn't dare even try. But no, I've never cared for my voice, you see, so...
But you can strengthen that voice with a bit of practice.
If I had time, you see, I'm busy, I'm running around. I haven't sung for years.
But
there must have been something there, because they...
Yeah, you sing the scales at home, and you know, break every chandelier out.
Don't sing at home. I had the last singing teacher I had was training me for opera.
Yeah.
And then he saw me on television one night and he called me in and he said, how do you want to sing, like you did last night, or the way I'm training you to sing? And I said, well, I'm not going to ever get a leading role in opera, so I'll stay with what I'm doing. And it just I've never really done exercises or anything like that.
But
just
that
do
does
it
not
till
necessarily mean that you can't.
I don't know if there's a voice there anymore. I really don't know.
Well, you don't know until you try. I was MC at a do some time ago, and trying to figure out a way to open, and I said, I know, I'm going to sing. So I'll sing the first and second verse. And then I picked a song because it was in my noggin. And listen, do you want to know a secret? And I didn't know that the Beatles had sung it. Oh, I had forgotten all about it. So after I had sung the 2 verses, I said, listen very carefully to what I say. That song, it took 4 Beatles to sing it. I sang it by myself, so that's something like this. I didn't get booed, but the applause only lasted about 5 seconds. So.
Yeah. Well, that was because they were anxious to hear you sing more.
No, they were anxious for me to get out of there. I want to hear. Mary, thank you so much for coming in.
Oh, Ryle, thank you for asking me.